Hello and welcome to the program Net Making for Beginners. In this series I will be showing you how to make netting using a technique called the Flying Dutchman. It's a very old technique and it's a very easy method to learn and is by far the fastest way to make netting by hand. Most netting is made by tying 2 knots. It is such an easy technique, there's no excuse for all fishermen to not know how to do this. If you participate in sports, baseball, soccer, or golf, you may want to make your own practice netting so that you don't have to play fetch all day long. If you're an artist or a designer, then it's such an easy thing to learn that you should add this to your design knowledge. Years ago, my father used to teach this as a part of a continuing adult education program. Some of his students went on to pursue it as careers, and they make a very good living by repairing netting for commercial fishermen. What I have in mind is in the beginning phase, teaching you to make net, I'm going to split it into 4 sections. The first section, right now, is to teach you about the tools and materials that we use to make nets. The second section, I will actually teach you how to make squares and rectangles. The third section, we're going to look at different shapes. We're going to look at different shapes such as triangles or circles and how to join netting. In the fourth section, we're going to troubleshoot any problems that you may have along the way. So be sure and subscribe, comment, and leave questions, and I will do whatever I can to answer them. You know, this is such a simple technique that if you're 10 years old and you want to learn to make netting, I'm going to go way out of my way to make it as clear and concise as I can so that you can learn this skill as well. Now, of course, you're going to need some kind of string or twine, and I wanted to show you the different types. This, of course, is cotton twine. This is what we used many years ago. These are nylon twines. This is a bonded nylon twine. It's important you remember that term, bonded. Bonded means that it's been pre-treated with a urethane that helps your knots hold together, and it also provides some protection as far as ultraviolet rays from sunlight. When you purchase it, be sure and take the label off and store it inside the twine so that you can identify it. This is Brownell number 12 C1 bonded twine. It's an excellent twine. Brownell's been making twines for a long time. This is a bonded number 4. This is what I use mostly. This is a tarred line. Tar was our first preservative in using any kind of twine, and it's still a mainstay of the fishing industry. This is a braided seine twine. It is not bonded. This is probably going to be the size that you find in a hardware store. This is polyester yarn. I think that would make a very interesting looking net. And of course you're going to need something to cut it with. I recommend a sharp pair of scissors and or heavy duty nail clippers. Now there's a couple of things that you do not want to use. This looks like nylon. It's not. It's polypropylene. And see how it likes to stay coiled up? Do not use that to begin with. This is fishing line, monofilament. It also likes to stay coiled up, and you should not use this. When it's like this, it's called memory, and you don't want to use any line that has memory. You're going to need something that I call a spacer. Some people call them gauges, and this determines the size netting that you're going to make. A lot of East Coasters and Europeans use these paddles. I only use these when I'm making especially large mesh netting. What I highly recommend is a short piece of wooden dowel, approximately 3 inches long. This is 3/4 of an inch. This is 5/8 of an inch diameter. 3/4. If you're a young person, I recommend this. It's a 1/2 inch diameter dowel, approximately 2.5 inches long. This is what I learned to make netting with. It's nothing more than a piece of cut bamboo from an old cane pole. These are PVC cylinders from PVC pipe that you can use. They come in handy. As long as they're consistent, that's what you want to use. A lot of people prefer to start their netting on loops such as this spring-loaded hasp. This is a keychain. This is a screw-together chain link. This is a keychain. And what I'll be showing you with is this. It's nothing more than a shower curtain rod holder. But it's not completely necessary. What I learned to do was just this, just a simple loop of twine. That'll work fine. Lastly, you're going to need some kind of needle. These are the commercially available needles. These are called minnows. They're very handy for starting netting out through swivels and rigging through chain links. And in small mesh knots, you may have to make the entire net with a minnow. This next small class are used primarily for repair work. If you're a young person, I recommend that you start with this. They're approximately 6 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. The next class, these are called sardines. This is a small sardine, medium sardine, and a super sardine. These next are more of a traditional shaped needles. This is what I prefer to use. This next class is called an H needle. Some people refer to them as Loomis needles. And next up we have homemade needles. These are wooden needles. These two that I've made myself. And something that you've probably never seen before. These are wire needles. They're very easy to make and last you a lifetime. This was made by Mr. Gerald Jescard of Jefferson, Louisiana. It's the only type of needle he ever used, and he was an excellent net maker. Now, to make one, what you need to do is get a coat hanger, some kind of pair of pliers, and a C-clamp or a vise. Many years ago, you couldn't buy a needle. You had to make your own needle. And that's how I think these wire needles came about. In this instance, we're going to turn this section into our center post and this section into our nose and fin section. That's it. There's our needle. So these are the few supplies that you're going to need to get started. If you care to just purchase your supplies, there are two companies that I highly recommend. The first is Alario Brothers Marine Hardware Company. They also have an eBay store. The second is Brunson Net and Supply Company. I've been doing business with both of them for a long time now, and I highly recommend that you use them. I wanted to have a word with you regarding safety. With making netting comes a responsibility. Realize that netting has been used as an entangling device for many thousands of years. Therefore, you should never leave netting unattended around very young children, or animals, or birds. In my area, there are a lot of shorebirds hopping around on one leg. This is from fishermen not properly discarding their fishing lines. If you have a bunch of junk netting, junk string, ropes, etc., please discard of them properly. Another aspect is that ropes, twines, and string can create a tripping hazard. You should always coil up and stow away your netting, your strings, and your ropes to where you don't trip over it. This also regards putting lines up neck high and leaving it at night to where somebody can walk into it or drive into it with an ATV or a bicycle, something like this. Another thing to keep in mind is that strings and ropes require particular focus when you're around motorized equipment, such as winches, boat engines, propellers, car drive belts, and power machinery. This can get tangled up and pull your hands into it quicker than you can respond. It requires certain focus and pay attention. Also, another thing is many man has thrown an anchor line off of his boat, not realizing that he has stepped into a loop of his anchor line, or his trawl line, or his crab traps, or his lobster traps. Things can go very bad very quickly. Another thing I wanted to mention to you is when it comes to cutting rope with a knife. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. The wrong way is to pull a knife towards you. The right way is to cut a knife away from you and down, and never toward another person. That being said, let's move on to our netting. Just keep in mind that strings, twines, and netting is nothing to be afraid of, but it is a tool that needs to be respected